Imagine waking up to a normal school day. But by the end of it, your classmates are either dead or undead. That's exactly how High School of the Dead throws us into its chaotic, blood-soaked world. With adrenaline-pumping action, seductive tension, and a society crumbling in real time, Episode 1 wastes no time setting the stage. So let's break it down. The episode kicks off with a seemingly ordinary day at Fujimi High School. Students laugh, teachers drone on, and life moves as usual. But in just a matter of minutes, everything spirals into chaos. Enter Takashi Komuro, our main protagonist. From the rooftop, he lazily gazes at the school grounds below, his mind weighed down by heartbreak. His childhood crush, Rei Miyamoto, is now dating his best friend Hisashi. Talk about a bad day. But little does he know, this is about to become the worst day of his life. Then it happens. At the school gates, a disoriented man stumbles forward, pressing against the metal bars. A teacher approaches to shoo him away. But the moment he gets close, the stranger lunges, sinking his teeth deep into the teacher's arm. Blood sprays. The teacher screams. Students watch in horror as their instructor collapses, only to rise again, his eyes glazed, his body twitching with unnatural hunger. The infection spreads like wildfire. Takashi, witnessing the terrifying scene from above, doesn't hesitate. He bolts downstairs, bursting into Rai's classroom and dragging her and Hisashi out. The three rush to the rooftop, desperately trying to make sense of the nightmare unfolding below. But Hisashi has been bitten, and they all know what that means. As the infection takes hold, Hisashi struggles, fighting the inevitable. "Kill me before I turn," he pleads, sweat and agony plastered across his face. Rei refuses, but Takashi, knowing what must be done, grips a bloodied bat, and with one decisive swing, his best friend is gone. Rai, consumed by grief and fury, lashes out. "You murderer!" she screams, fists pounding Takashi's chest. But there's no time for emotions. The school is in chaos, students being devoured left and right. They have to move. They have to survive. Meanwhile, across campus, a ragtag group of survivors begins to emerge. Saeko Busujima, the skilled kendo club captain, stays eerily calm, her wooden sword slicing through the undead with deadly precision. Kohta Hirano, an awkward gun otaku, finally finds himself in his element, grinning as he crafts makeshift weapons. Shizuka Marikawa, the ditzy school nurse, is more confused than helpful. But hey, she's still alive. As the sun sets, our survivors realize one chilling truth. The world they once knew is gone. The age of the dead has begun. Episode 2 opens with Takashi and Rai, still in shock over Hisashi's death. They find themselves trapped on the rooftop, surrounded by groaning, bloodthirsty undead. But there's no time to grieve. If they don't act fast, they'll join the ranks of the walking dead. Down below, the school is in full-scale meltdown. Students are being devoured left and right, and the few survivors desperately seek shelter. It's here that we meet more of our main cast. The intellectual yet ruthless Saya Takagi, the skilled and deadly Saeko Busujima, the cowardly yet resourceful Kohta Hirano, and the school nurse Shizuka Marikawa, each of them forced to fight their way through the carnage. Back to Takashi and Rai, their only escape route is a maintenance ladder leading down. By using a fire hose, they were able to inch their way among the undead. They need to be resourceful and use all the tools they can get a hand on, since survival is the only thing that matters now. Meanwhile, in another part of the school, Saya Takagi, the sharp-tongued genius, teams up with Kohta Hirano, a gun-obsessed otaku. With his knowledge of firearms and Saya's tactical mind, they stand a chance at surviving the outbreak. Kohta, using a makeshift nail gun, begins to unleash headshots, proving that even the most unlikely students can become warriors in this new world. On the other side of the campus, Saeko Busujima, the captain of the kendo club, showcases her incredible combat skills. With a wooden bokken in hand, she cuts down the undead with ruthless efficiency. her calm and composed demeanor making her a terrifying force against the infected. Meanwhile, the ditzy yet oddly competent nurse, Shizuka Marikawa, finds herself caught up in the chaos. Takashi and Rei finally reach a parking area outside the school, where they discover a bus, possibly their way to freedom. Just as they prepare to leave, they hear the voices of survivors. Rei warns Takashi against helping them, insisting he'll regret it, yet he chooses to save them anyway. But was it the right choice? Could rescuing these survivors put Takashi and Rei in even greater danger? Now that they've escaped the nightmare within the school, what new horrors await them beyond its walls? The chapter opens with a chilling scene. One of the undead aimlessly wandering in front of a 7-cent convenience store. Inside, Simon, the cashier, stands in a daze, seemingly oblivious to the unfolding apocalypse. This eerie calm is abruptly shattered as a bus, commandeered by Shizuka Marikawa, barrels through the streets, colliding with the wandering zombie. Meanwhile, inside the minibus, tension mounts among the survivors. A male student, disgruntled and fearful, voices his frustration about the group's decision to head into the city, feeling marginalized in the decision-making process. With the tension inside the minibus, Shizuka's distracted behind the wheel becomes evident as she narrowly avoids obstacles, swerving to miss an overturned vehicle and nearly colliding with another. Kurakami suggests seeking refuge, pointing out the 7-cent convenience store as a potential haven. The situation grows more dire when Shizuka witnesses people falling from a helicopter, causing her to abruptly halt the bus. The sudden stop exacerbates the already high-strung atmosphere inside the vehicle. Amidst the chaos, the disgruntled male student confronts Takashi, accusing him of arrogance and challenging his decisions. The confrontation escalates as the student hurls insults, calling Takashi a little bitch. Rai, unwilling to tolerate the disrespect, swiftly intervenes, striking the student in the abdomen with her broom handle, leaving him gasping on the floor. The sudden act of violence shocks the other passengers, plunging the bus into a tense silence. Sensing an opportunity, Koichi Shido, a teacher with dubious intentions, seizes the moment to advocate for the establishment of a clear leadership hierarchy. He commends Rai's decisive action as evidence of the necessity for strong leadership. Saya Takagi, ever perceptive and skeptical, sarcastically insinuates that Shido is positioning himself for the role. Unfazed, Shido asserts his qualifications, citing his status as a teacher, and proposes a vote to appoint a leader. Manipulating the fear and uncertainty of the students, he orchestrates a majority vote in his favor, effectively installing himself as the leader. Disgusted by Koichi Shido's insistence on leadership, Rai made the bold decision to leave the bus. Takashi, caught off guard, confronted her about it. Rai had already warned him he would regret his choice to save Shido, and now they were facing the consequences of that very decision. Suddenly, out of nowhere, another bus came barreling down the street, swerving recklessly. Inside, the passengers had already turned into the undead, causing the vehicle to spiral out of control. The bus collided with another car, flipping over before erupting into a fiery explosion, taking the zombies inside with it. The wreckage left Takashi and Rei stranded, trapped between the burning debris and their own bus, cutting them off from the rest of their group. With no way back, Takashi quickly devised a plan. He told Saeko that they would regroup at the police station by a certain time today or the next day. With their plan set, they split up and went their separate ways. As Takashi and Rai set off on foot, the chaos of their new reality became more evident. Then, without warning, something grabbed Takashi. It was an undead. Struggling to break free, Takashi fought as the creature lunged, its jaws snapping dangerously close. But luck was on his side. The undead was still wearing a helmet, preventing it from biting him. As Takashi struggled beneath its weight, Rai seized the moment, grabbing a brick and smashing it into the back of the creature's head. The impact shattered both the helmet and the zombie's skull, silencing it for good. Catching their breath, They were about to continue their journey when Takashi noticed something. If the undead was wearing a helmet, that meant there had to be a bike nearby. With that realization, they pressed forward, unaware that the world they once knew was already gone. Democracy Under the Dead delves deep into the psychological and social dynamics of individuals under extreme duress. It explores themes of power, authority, and the fragility of societal norms when confronted with existential threats. The characters are forced to confront not only the external horrors of the undead, but also the internal moral dilemmas that arise when survival is at stake. The chapter opens with Takashi and Rai speeding through the desolate streets on a motorcycle, the roar of the engine cutting through the eerie silence of the night. The city, once bustling with life, now lies in ruins, a grim testament to the rapid collapse of society. As they navigate the perilous roads, they come across an abandoned police car. Seizing the opportunity to arm themselves, Rai searches the vehicle and retrieves an expandable baton, a revolver, and a handful of bullets. These weapons, though limited, offer a semblance of security in an increasingly unpredictable world. As they continue their journey, the motorcycle begins to sputter, signaling a dwindling fuel supply. Spotting a gas station up ahead, they decide to stop and refuel. The station appears deserted, its once bright lights now extinguished. Takashi takes the initiative to check inside the station if there's anything useful. Takashi saw a register and decided to bash it open, making unnecessary noise that startled Rai outside. The atmosphere is tense, every rustle of the wind and distant moan serving as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in the corners. Suddenly, the fragile calm is shattered as a deranged survivor emerges from the darkness. His eyes wild with desperation, he lunges at Rai, brandishing a knife. Overpowering her, he holds the blade to her throat, his intentions malicious and clear. He begins to grope her inappropriately, his breath ragged and erratic. Rai's eyes widen in terror, her body trembling under his grip. Takashi, hearing the commotion, turns to see Rai in peril. His heart races, a mix of fear and anger surging through him. Without hesitation, he draws the revolver they had just acquired. The weight of the weapon feels foreign in his hand, but his resolve is unwavering. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he aims at the assailant. The world seems to slow as he squeezes the trigger, the gunshot echoing through the empty streets. The bullet finds its mark, striking the attacker and causing him to release Rai. She stumbles back, her hand instinctively reaching for the sore spot where the knife had pressed against her skin. The assailant falls to the ground, clutching his wound, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and disbelief. In the ensuing chaos, the commotion attracts a horde of undead from the surrounding area. The undead figures emerge from the shadows, their lifeless eyes fixated on the fresh prey before them. The wounded attacker, now forgotten by Takashi and Rai, becomes the focus of the zombies' insatiable hunger. He screams in agony as they descend upon him, tearing into his flesh with relentless ferocity. Takashi and Rai, seizing the moment, quickly finish refueling the motorcycle. With no time to process the traumatic events, they rev the engine and speed away, leaving the gruesome scene behind. As they ride through the night, the weight of their actions begins to settle upon them. Takashi grapples with the reality that he has taken a human life, a notion that seemed unimaginable just a day prior. Rai, too, is haunted by the encounter, her mind replaying the moments of terror and violation. The world they once knew has vanished, replaced by a brutal landscape where moral boundaries blur, and survival often necessitates unforgivable acts.
Today, we're plunging into episode 5 of Highschool of the Dead, titled Streets of the Dead. Let's kick things off with a quick reminder of where we left off. The episode opens at Kansai International Airport, a rare calm amid chaos. We meet Rika Minami, a sharpshooter in the SAT Special Assault Team, expertly clearing zombies from the runway to aid civilian evacuation. When zombies breach a fuel truck, her partner sacrifices himself by detonating it. A brutal but heroic moment that sets the stakes for the world outside. Meanwhile, back on the road, the remaining survivors. Saya, Kuda, Saeko, and Shizuka are trapped in a war zone between unruly survivors and the undead. Their patience snaps when Koichi Shido, turning cultish, tightens control over the group. Kohta forcibly persuades the others to disembark from the bus, rebelling against Shido's authoritarian hold. They head toward the bridge in search of Takashi and Rei, but the path is anything but safe. Zombies swarm the bridge, putting the group in mortal peril as they're cornered with nowhere to run. Just at the brink of despair, Takashi and Rei burst onto the scene, literally. Riding in with daring flair, they crash onto the bridge to join the fight. Rei springs into action, Saeko unleashes precision mayhem, and Kuta tears through the horde with his nail gun. It's tense, it's stylish, and it's the ultimate adrenaline spike. Shaken but reunited, the group needs a reprieve, and quick. Shizuka suggests staying at the apartment of her friend Rika, where they spot a Humvee parked outside, a sign of both safety and camaraderie. They move inside, clear the building of lingering zombies, and prepare for the night ahead. This episode sweeps from high-tension action to emotional reunions, and showcases the characters' resilience and trust in one another. The symbolism of blocking bridges, the corrupting appeal of cult leadership, and the need for refuge all underscore the apocalypse's dual assault. Tonight, we explore Episode 6 of Highschool of the Dead, titled In the Dead of the Night, where even shelter offers no sanctuary and tensions simmer below the surface. Our group finds a rare moment of peace, or as close to it as possible. Inside Rika's cleared apartment, the women retreat to the bath to refresh themselves. Laughter bubbles under the surface of crisis. The light-hearted teasing, the shared intimacy, becomes both a comfort and a reminder of life before the fall. Meanwhile, Takashi and Kohta are elsewhere in the apartment, preparing the arsenal they've uncovered. Amid shotgun shells clinking and weapons being checked, psychological tension hums faintly beneath the surface, preparing not just for physical danger, but emotional confrontations yet to come. Meanwhile, beyond the apartment walls, the world continues to crumble. At the bridge blockade, police are pressed to breaking point by both zombie onslaughts and desperate civilians. A conspiracy theorist incites protesters, claiming the outbreak is a bioweapon from the government. With no support from headquarters, police are ordered to open fire, revealing how quickly civilization devolves when panic triumphs. Back in the apartment, emotional lines blur. Takashi contends with a tipsy Shizuka, and then Rei ambushes him. In her drunken haze, Rei challenges his emotional distance, calling him boring compared to Hisashi. Hurt, humiliated, their tension crescendos, until, in a breath, she softens, leaning close. But before resolution can bloom, a dog barks, insistent, relentless. Outside, that simple sound becomes a ritual open for calamity, attracting the undead, forcing the group to face once again how fragile their refuge truly is. The episode opens in the stillness after dusk, inside Rika's apartment. Shadows move outside, and inside, Takashi Komuro and Kota Hirano keep watch from the balcony. They peer through binoculars, scanning the street below, trying to measure how much danger has moved closer. The glow of distant streetlights reflects off the eyes of wandering zombies. The city seems to breathe in unstable rhythm, hunger, fear, desperation. Suddenly, their attention is drawn to a man leading his small daughter, Alice Marsato, through the street. The pair are desperate, seeking shelter. The girl clings to her father's hand. Her father knocks on doors, pleads for help. But survival instinct has turned neighbors paranoid. One house has its lights blazing, its doors shut tight. The father begs and bargains. The door opens a crack. Then, a knife on a stick is thrust through. The father is stabbed. Blood blossoming, he falls. Alice screams. Alice is alone now, her father's body serving as both protection and trap. The zombies, alerted by the screams, begin drawing near. Takashi watches, heart pounding. Kohta grips his rifle. It is a test. Will they act? Saeko, Rei, and the others, still inside, see the chaos below. Saeko warns that they can't possibly save everyone. The rules have changed. Still, in Takashi, something shifts. Watching Alice, seeing her terror, the helplessness of a child abandoned drives him past fear. He resolves to rescue her. Rei hands him the revolver. Kohta readies his sniper rifle, offering supporting fire. Saeko gives Takashi space. Go, we'll protect this place. Takashi revs up the motorcycle in the courtyard. The moment is taut. Every engine sound seems loud in the night. Rei and Saeko push open the gate, trying not to alert the undead. The bike tears through, weaving between the moans and limbs of the undead. Kohta snipe fires, clearing zombies that block Takashi's path. Takashi reaches the garden where Alice cowers by her father's body. Zombies are close. He leaps from his bike, ignoring the pain from skidding off corpses. The air is full of groans, the scent of rotten blood. Kohta's rifle rings out, thinning the undead around him. Takashi, eyes steely, pulls Alice into his arms. He covers her with his jacket. He places a shirt over her father, lays a hand on Alice, trying to soothe her. There's a moment of silence, broken only by whimpers and distant groans. Then Takashi maneuvers them toward a fence. They balance along its top, Alice clinging. The dog Zero, their small canine companion, close by, protecting her as best it can. Each step dangerous. Each breath might attract more. Inside, Saya, Shizuka, and Rei realize Takashi is dangerously outnumbered. Supplies, weapons, everything necessary for escape are grabbed. They load the Humvee ammunition, medical supplies, gear. Shizuka fires up the engine. The plan, to bring the vehicle in to help pull Takashi and Alice from the danger zone. Saeko, remarkable in her resolve, jumps atop the Humvee. Sword in hand, she becomes the shield in front slicing zombies, buying space. Kohta snipes from behind as the Humvee roars into the alleyway, tires skidding over debris and bodies. Each moment is life or death. Takashi, carrying Alice and with Zero at their side, leaps onto the roof of the Humvee as it draws near. Alice clutches him, tears streaking down her face. He holds her close, whispers something soft, assuring, even as fear churns. Once Alice is safe inside the vehicle, Takashi climbs in too. This episode presses the question, how much do you risk to save one life? Takashi's decision to save Alice at great risk to himself stands as an affirmation that humanity remains, even when everything seems lost. Moral ambiguity, Seiko's warning that they can't save everyone, isn't coldness, it's realism. Leadership in crisis, Takashi steps forward, not because he's perfect, but because no one else could. Kohta supports him with marksmanship. Saeko protects the group. Rei steels herself. Each has a role. Resilience and escape. The Humvee is more than a vehicle. It's a symbol of motion, of refusing to be trapped by fear. Moving forward is survival. Night is the enemy of hope. But sometimes, hope must act under cover of darkness. In Dead Night and the Dead Ruck, the darkness doesn't just hide danger, it forces decisions. To move, to act, to save, every choice echoes in silence. Takashi rescuing Alice is bravery, yes, but it's also a reminder that, even in a world of death, compassion still lives, that the smallest person's safety can define what's worth fighting for. And so, with Alice rescued and the Humvee now carrying not just supplies but new life and fragile hope, the group drives into the darkness of an uncertain future. They traded one shelter for the open road, one night of tense rest for another night of peril. But something has changed because in saving Alice, Takashi reminded them all that survival is not enough. To keep going, they must also remember why they live, not just how. The city groans behind them, fires burn, and the moans of the undead fade as distance grows. Yet ahead lies only shadow, and the unbroken question, where can they go that the dead will not follow?
Tonight we're diving into Episode 8. This chapter tests how far a group can push the vehicle of survival, their Humvee, and asks a harder question. When the road looks empty, are you being led somewhere, or into a trap? Strap in, this one moves from quiet unease to full-tilt panic. The episode opens on the aftermath of a rare success. The Humvee has carried them across a swollen river into a neighborhood that looks, at first, almost peaceful. Streets are quiet, and houses sit like sleeping beasts. For a moment, safety seems possible. The undead haven't swarmed these streets, and the group lets themselves believe that Saya's home, their immediate destination, might be a true refuge. This quiet is deceptive. Inside the Humvee, practical decisions and private small mercies play out side by side. The girls change out of the skimpy clothes they wore in haste into more sensible garments. There's a gentle, human scene of modesty and quiet laughter that the apocalypse hasn't erased. Takashi and Kohta check weapons. The rattling of shells and the metallic click of a safety lever become the soundtrack of preparation. These domestic moments ground the characters. They are, even now, ordinary people who joke, wash, and fret about scraped knees even while catastrophe circles their wheels. They choose a route toward Saya Takagi's house, the map of old lives and old addresses that still matters when the whole world has gone mad. The approach is slow and careful. At first the streets are mercifully empty, no staggering bodies in the gutters, no limbs snagged on hedges. The group lets their guard down. It's a dangerous human impulse. When no immediate threat is visible, hope blossoms, and hope invites risk. Then the trap appears without fanfare, a wire strung taut across the road. At first glance it could be dismissed as a pedestrian barrier left by panicked citizens, but as the Humvee drives through, the wire snags the vehicle's underside. The Humvee bucks, the wheels lock, and momentum dies like a heartbeat. The vehicle spins out. In the blink it becomes vulnerable, a hulking metal coffin in the middle of an empty street. The group finds, too late, that the silence is not the absence of danger but the presence of a snare. This sequence as the episode's turning point, it turns steady tension into immediate threat. Panic is immediate. Kohta and Takashi react the way they always do, fast and practical. Saeko moves with the cold economy of a trained fighter. Her wooden sword slices and forces are decisive and efficient. Rei and Shizuka, shaken but fierce, do what must be done. The zombies, first a trickle, then a tide, press in from alleys and yards. It emphasizes how tiny decisions, a missed bolt, a second of delay, can become life or death. We see individual bravery framed against the grinding, indifferent mass of the undead. Takashi becomes both leader and human shield. He fires a shotgun until the shells run low. When bullets are gone, the team improvises. Improvised weapons, teamwork, and sheer animal will replace ammunition. The scarcity of bullets, of safe routes, of time to breathe. Outside of the immediate combat, the collapse of institutions. Brief cuts show the world beyond the neighborhood, a newsfeed of failure, a glimpse that suggests infection is not contained to small towns. A short, chilling image hints that leaders and official seats of power are not immune. This is not merely a local disaster. The social fabric has torn everywhere. Reminders that the group's personal struggle is part of a wider unraveling. After a grueling push, the group clears enough space to move, but the victory is costly. The Humvee is scarred and less reliable. The exhaustion on each face is immediate and honest. They reach Saya's house at last, but the house itself is not the clean sanctuary they longed for. The episode ends with a mixture of relief and foreboding. They made it closer to home, yes, but the world outside is an architecture of traps, and the smallest oversight can be fatal. The fragility of safe spaces. The episode interrogates what safety actually means in a collapsed society. An empty street is not necessarily safe. Often it's staged danger. This undermines the survivor's ability to make calm, rational judgments. Resource scarcity is tension. Bullets, fuel, and working vehicles are as precious as human life. When the Humvee stalls, the story turns on the scarcity of mobility and the desperation that creates. Human moments hold weight. The quieter scenes, changing clothes, shared laughter, checking weapons, remind us that human bonds remain the strongest survival tool. The episode alternates these small comforts with sudden violence to keep emotional stakes high. From the deceptive quiet streets to the cruel trap that almost cost them everything, this chapter reminded us that in a world overrun by the dead, survival isn't just about fighting zombies, it's about outsmarting the living dangers too. Today, we dive into Highschool of the Dead Episode 9. Night descends on the ruined city as Takashi and Saeko press forward, their amphibious ATV rumbling through half-flooded streets. The moonlight reflects off stagnant water, corpses drifting silently beneath the surface. For the first time, it is just the two of them, alone against the endless dark. They stop at a small riverside area to catch their breath. Takashi is exhausted but determined. Saeko, calm but enigmatic, removes her wet outer layer with deliberate ease. She teases him with a faint smirk. It is playful on the surface, but there's tension underneath. Both know this moment of quiet is fragile, stolen from a world that wants them dead. Their respite is short-lived. Drawn by the noise of the vehicle, the dead begin to stir. They lure a group toward a public fountain, using the splash of water to mask their movements. Saeko steps into battle, her bokken, the wooden practice sword, cutting arcs through skulls and necks. Her moving with inhuman precision, as if every strike is a deadly kata. She is terrifyingly graceful. Takashi watches, torn between awe and unease. Then, it happens. Among the horde shuffle figures too small to mistake, zombified. Saeko freezes mid-strike. For the first time, her composure fractures, her breath shortens, her eyes widen. The killer's rhythm falters, and she cannot bring herself to raise her weapon against them. Silent but suffocating as her body trembles. Takashi sees it instantly. He pulls her back, dragging her away from paralysis before the horde consumes them both. They retreat into the grounds of a small Shinto shrine, hidden among trees. The shrine is empty, abandoned, but offers a brief sanctuary. Saeko kneels in the quiet, shoulders tense. She begins to speak, not as the unshakable warrior, but as a woman carrying a shadow. She tells Takashi of her past. 4 years ago, she was assaulted on her way home from kendo practice. She fought back, and not only defeated her attacker, but savored the power she felt as she struck him down. She admits she enjoyed the violence, the control, the moment of dominance. Her voice does not rise, it is calm, confessional, almost chilling. In her eyes is the fear that she is not just a survivor, but someone born for killing. That part of her takes pleasure in it. Takashi does not turn away. Instead, he steps closer. He tells her he doesn't reject her, that what she feels doesn't erase who she is. Then, in the heavy silence, he kisses her. The kiss is brief, awkward, and deeply human. It is not passion that fills the moment, but connection, a shared recognition that they are both broken, both clinging to what they can. Morning breaks, and the dead gather again. Their moans echo against the shrine's torii gate. Saeko hesitates, her confession still weighing on her, afraid to lose herself to the thrill. But Takashi will not allow her to falter. He confronts her bluntly, forcing her to accept both her darkness and her strength. He tells her he wants her, all of her, at his side. Something shifts. Saeko lifts not her wooden bokken this time, but a real steel sword she finds within the shrine's offerings. With a steady hand, she steps forward and unleashes her full power. Zombies fall one by one, heads split, bodies cut in half, Saeko's eyes alive with purpose. She is no longer hiding, she has embraced the truth of who she is. Together, Takashi and Saeko cut a path through the horde and press onward. Eventually, they arrive at the fortified gates of Seiya's home. Towering walls, armed guards, and floodlights await them, a stronghold of the living in a world of the dead. For now, they have survived. But in Takashi's thoughts, one truth lingers. He kissed Saeko not out of pure romance, but because in this world, loneliness kills faster than zombies. And for both of them, connection is survival. The chapter closes not with triumph, but with an uneasy stillness. The dead are never far. And that was episode 9. Saeko faced her past, revealed her darkest truth, and found strength in acceptance. Takashi's bond with her grew in ways that will shape the group moving forward. But survival is never without a cost. Today we turn our focus to episode 10 of Highschool of the Dead, titled The Dead's House Rules. It's a pivotal episode in which the group's fragile safety is tested, inner conflicts flare, and the nature of survival becomes more than just fighting zombies. Takashi and Saeko emerge from their harrowing journey and step into the domain of Seiya's home, which functions more like a refuge fortress. The grounds are beautifully manicured, walls high, guards at gate, and servants and staff moving in coordinated silence. The atmosphere is one of controlled order, almost as if life before the dead has been suspended and replaced by a new, rigid routine. The rest of the group, Rei, Kohta, Shizuka, Alice, Rika, and others are there, recuperating. Rei is still injured, and much of the opening moments show her being tended by Shizuka with medicinal salves. The contrast is stark, the violence and chaos of the outside world versus the immaculate, well-defended interior of the Takagi estate. As they settle in, Seiya's father, Suichiro Takagi, takes center stage. He steps forward to address the group, asserting that in his domain, a new set of rules must apply. His tone is firm, the dead must be cut off, dissent must be controlled, and sacrifices may be necessary. He demonstrates this resolve by bringing out a zombified former retainer of the Takagi household before a gathered crowd. Under Suichiro's command, the zombified retainer is decapitated with precision, a grim warning to the survivors: mercy is a weakness and authority is absolute. Seiya is shaken. She confronts her father, accusing him of presuming she was dead and giving up on her. He coldly responds that decisions must be made for survival, regardless of sentiment. Takashi, enraged at this, retorts sharply, telling Suichiro that Seiya is alive and deserves respect, that she is part of this group and not something to be ordered around. The tension is thick. For a moment, all eyes are on Takashi as he challenges the head of this internal safe zone. Inside the mansion walls, Kuta Hirano is restless. He feels constrained by the rules and rituals imposed. He argues with the others. Their swords and blades are fine, but they need firearms. They cannot go back to scavenging with bare blades when guns offer leverage and distance. He storms off in frustration, determined to find a weapon cache. The group chases him, and they find him sneaking into an armory or weapon stores. When Suichiro arrives and asks who Kohta is to claim an arsenal, Kohta falters, but the rest of the group intercedes. They argue that Kohta has proven himself indispensable, that his skills with firearms are vital, and that in a world ruled by life and death, they cannot afford to strip someone's tool of survival. The standoff is quiet but intense. Ultimately, the group is allowed to keep the guns, cementing Kohta's role and the group's uneasy place within the Takagi compound. While outwardly the mansion appears peaceful, the episode drops hints of danger and duplicity. Servants watch from corners. Guards exchange glances. There's uneasy silence when certain characters pass by private rooms. Moments of internal conflict, between loyalty and distrust, between ideals and pragmatism, simmer. By episode's end, the group is reconciled, at least outwardly, under the Takagi authority. The silence is heavy, and one knows the undead are never far. The rules may hold for now, but they feel fragile, as though one crack could shatter everything. A chilling reminder that sometimes the real danger isn't just the dead outside, but the rules we're forced to live by inside. What seemed like sanctuary for Takashi and the others may soon become another battlefield, one built on pride, fear, and survival. As the world of High School of the Dead grows darker, every alliance, every emotion, and every decision could mean life or death. The group may have found walls to protect them, but freedom? That's something no mansion can offer. Today, we peel back the layers of Episode 11, Dead Storm Rising, an episode defined by moral reckoning and the final collapse of global civilization. The temporary calm enjoyed at the Takagi mansion proved short-lived, not just due to internal conflicts, but because the global situation had catastrophically deteriorated. News reports, flashes of information received through residual communication channels, confirmed the horrifying truth. Major global superpowers were not cooperating to defeat the undead. They were fighting each other. Multiple nations had resorted to launching tactical nuclear weapons. This staggering escalation shifts the narrative from a zombie horror story to a definitive, world-ending apocalypse. The widespread exchange of nuclear devices signals the absolute failure of organized governance and brings the catastrophic conflict directly to Japan's doorstep. The global nuclear crisis effectively acts as a final, definitive countdown, making any remaining hope of returning to a pre-collapse society entirely impossible and compelling the survivors to abandon fixed, isolated havens. While the world outside descended into nuclear chaos, new hierarchies were being established within the Takagi estate, based entirely on demonstrated competence and honor. Soichiro Takagi formally recognized the lethal skills of Saeko Busujima, presenting her with an elegant, specialized historical katana. This gesture of trust and respect solidified Saeko's position as a respected warrior within the compound, granting her implicit authority that surpassed the nominal ranking of many of the adult retainers. This act underscores that in this new world, competence and willingness to act are valued above title or age. Meanwhile, the emotional stress of survival continued to strain the relationships within the core group. Rei Miyamoto, wrestling with fear and intense admiration for Takashi's leadership during the crisis, made a highly aggressive romantic advance. She urged Takashi to choose her, attempting to force a romantic resolution in the face of uncertainty. Takashi, maintaining his focus on the immediate threats and the group's stability, showed restraint and sidestepped her plea, continuing the complicated dynamic between him, Rei, and Saeko. Recognizing the need for coordinated action, Seiya Takagi, accompanied by Takashi Komuro and Kuta Hirano, led a short excursion to one of the nearby refugee camps her father had established for his retainers and their families. Saya attempted to use her formidable intellect and understanding of the situation to convince the adults in the camp to accept the severity of the threat and begin organizing for self-defense. This mission proved to be a profound failure. The adults in the camp, gripped by denial and fear, refused to accept Saya's warnings. They chose instead to embrace a comforting lie, preferring to blame their protectors, the Takagi family, for the killing pandemic, rather than confront the undeniable reality of the undead. They derided Saya, accusing her of being highly arrogant and dismissing her as a child with an inflated sense of self-importance. This moment demonstrates the limits of logic against mass hysteria. Saya's strategic intellect was rendered powerless by the dangerous human capacity for self-deception. Kuta Hirano, watching the scene unfold, provided a clear explanation for this phenomenon. Humans try not to see what they don't want to see. He observed that the adults were fundamentally scared and, desperate for any answer that did not involve accepting their imminent deaths, chose to believe a fiction, even one that required them to accuse their saviors. This failure structurally reinforces the group's necessary independence, confirming that external adult authority, even that nominally aligned with the Takagi family, could not be trusted. The gifting of the katana to Saeko, the decisive warrior, coupled with Saya's rejection by the ignorant retainers, demonstrates that Soichiro, the lord of the manor, had tacitly recognized that decisive action outweighs mere intellectual persuasion in this new world. The fragile peace at the Takagi estate was shattered by the arrival of the group's most despised teacher, Koichi Shido. Shido arrived leading his school bus full of student followers, having successfully transformed them into a perverse, cult-like group. He achieved this manipulation by presenting himself as a sinful adult who needed the innocence of the youth to guide him, exploiting their vulnerability and desire for a new authority figure in a world without rules. The bus interior is implied to be the setting for highly sensual, non-conformist behavior, reinforcing the depraved nature of Shido's New World Order. Shido's true cruelty is revealed in how he handles dissent. A student who had originally provided the location of Saya's house to Shido, likely hoping to gain favor or refuge, refused to participate in the cult's hedonistic activities. Shido quickly deemed this student a failure to conform and immediately forced him off the bus, leaving him exposed and vulnerable to be taken by the approaching undead. Shido successfully tricked his way into the heavily guarded Takagi compound, exploiting the remaining vestiges of civility and the notion of seeking refuge. He leveraged his students' apparent desperation to breach the defenses, thereby injecting his corrupt influence directly into the heart of the sanctuary. Shido represents an enemy far more dangerous than the mindless undead. He has calculated moral decay, proving that the human element remains the most insidious threat in the apocalypse. The protagonist group had gathered in the main foyer, finalizing their decision to leave the compound and search for their parents. Rei Miyamoto, her senses heightened by adrenaline and trauma, immediately detected the presence of her old tormentor. She charged out of the room and burst through the main entrance without a second's hesitation. Rei was armed with her high-powered rifle, which was now equipped with a deadly bayonet. She slammed the bayonet against Shido, stopping the point just before impaling him. Shido, master of manipulation, immediately attempted to play the victim, feigning surprise and innocence, questioning why Rei would attack him so suddenly. The intensity of Rei's rage is rooted not in typical student-teacher conflict, but in institutional corruption that ruined her life. Shido's father was a corrupt politician, and Koichi Shido had used his position as a teacher to retaliate against Rei's family. Specifically, Shido forced Rei to repeat a grade as direct punishment for her own father's investigations into Shido's politician father. Rei had previously maintained restraint to avoid compromising her father's investigation, but now that civilization had collapsed, the need for restraint vanished, leaving her free to pursue personal revenge. As the confrontation escalated, Soichiro Takagi emerged, his commanding presence instantly freezing the tension. He demonstrated the harsh reality of the new world by providing Rei the license to kill. Soichiro dismissed his previous political connections to Shido's family as irrelevant now that the rule of law had ended. He delivered a clear mandate stating unequivocally, "If you want to kill him, I won't stand in your way." Soichiro, acting as the temporary judge and jury of the post-apocalyptic manor, deemed Shido's pervasive corruption worthy of death, validating Rei's desire for personal honor and justice. This act underscores the complete breakdown of formal legal structures, replaced entirely by a system of personal honor and decisive judgment. As Rei held the bayonet inches from Shido's throat, Takashi instinctively moved to intervene, but Saeko Busujima immediately stopped him. Saeko recognized this moment as crucial for Rei's personal resolution and insisted that the decision to execute or spare Shido had to be Rei's alone. Meanwhile, Dr. Shizuka Marikawa, protecting the young Alice, gently pulled the girl close and covered her eyes, shielding her from the potential violence about to erupt. Shido, attempting a final desperate maneuver, began taunting Rei, trying to provoke her into pulling the trigger and transforming himself into a martyr. Rei stared intensely, weighing the cost of vengeance against the indignity of his survival. She ultimately decided against killing him. Rei lowered her rifle and turned away from the confrontation, striding past her friends. She delivered her final, devastating judgment: "He's not even worth killing." This was not an act of traditional mercy, but a profound display of contempt. Rei refused to grant Shido the dignity or significance of a meaningful death, choosing instead to relegate him to irrelevance in a world full of greater threats. She asserted her moral superiority, forcing Shido to live knowing that his survival was only due to Rei being a better human than he is. A noticeable calmness washed over Rei as she walked away, signifying the successful resolution of her long-held trauma. Soichiro Takagi, honoring Rei's verdict, immediately banished Shido and his cult. They were forced back onto the bus and ordered to drive out of the compound and back into the chaos of the infected city. Shido, his facade of power broken by Rei's dismissal, retreated in surprised fury, while Rei watched the bus drive away with a resolute sense of peace. The moral crises of the episode. The adults' dangerous denial at the camp, Shido's successful infiltration, and Rei's ultimate decision confirmed that the Takagi mansion was not a sustainable long-term solution. The group's members, having resolved their most dangerous internal human conflict, finalized their earlier decision to leave the compound and venture back into the treacherous urban environment to find their remaining parents and loved ones. Episode 11 functions as a crucial transition point, ensuring the survivors have faced and defeated their inner ethical conflicts just as the ultimate external threat arrives. The episode concludes with final confirmation of the global catastrophe. News reports vividly describe the widespread use of tactical nuclear weapons, cementing the collapse of organized civilization and ensuring that the final journey back into the city will be fraught with not only the danger of the undead, but the fallout of a nuclear war. The global nuclear threat replaces the localized zombie threat as the immediate driver of the plot, creating extreme urgency for the group's departure. The episode began not with a zombie attack, but with a moment of hopeful realization. Dr. Shizuka Marikawa, displaying a sudden burst of memory, remembered the phone number of her friend Rika Minami, who worked at the police firing range. Shizuka was described as being practically jumping for joy at the success. She borrowed Kutahirano's phone, carefully verifying the buttons, and successfully placed the call to Rika. Shizuka immediately informed Rika that the survivors had taken Rika's firearms, but Rika dismissed the concern, focusing only on determining Shizuka's location. This brief conversation promised a potential lifeline and reunion, a final fleeting moment of normalcy and safety. Just as Shizuka was about to relay their current location, the Takagi mansion, the sky was abruptly illuminated by a bright light that lasted only a second, followed immediately by total silence from the phone. The electronics sizzled and died. Saya Takagi, the intellectual core of the group, instantly recognized the gravity of the event. She asked Rei Miyamoto to check the scope on her gun, which was immediately confirmed to be non-functional. Saya deduced that the phenomenon was the result of a high-altitude nuclear explosion, a likely countermeasure launched by remaining military forces against the global outbreak. This detonation, however, produced an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, which peppered the ground with the effects. Saya explained that the blast effectively rendered all modern electrical devices useless. Mobile phones were dead, cars dependent on computer systems would fail, and, critically, the heavy electric motors that powered the mansion's iron gates were now defunct. The global crisis escalated in a single moment, forcing the survivors to recognize that the technological infrastructure of their civilization was now completely paralyzed, eliminating any lingering hope of organized modern rescue. The catastrophic impact of the EMP was immediately realized far beyond the mansion's walls. Shido's bus, which had just begun its journey away from the Takagi compound, experienced total electronic failure. The engine cut out, and the crucial computerized braking system failed, leaving Shido with no control. The massive bus careened forward, slamming violently into the forklift truck and the remaining portions of the barricade that the staff had been in the process of dismantling. This collision destroyed the protective barrier completely, creating a massive, unavoidable opening. The sound of the colossal crash immediately drew hordes of the infected. The dead began to funnel through the new, gaping hole in the defenses and moved inexorably toward the Takagi mansion. The symbol of political corruption, Shido, had inadvertently caused the physical collapse of the structured authority that had protected the heroes, paving the way for pure chaos to breach the compound. The mansion's response was immediate but overwhelmed. Soichiro Takagi, realizing the horrifying severity of the crash, frantically yelled for the staff to close the iron gates. However, the EMP had silenced the electric motors. The staff strained desperately against the massive metal, attempting to manually push the heavy gates shut. This proved futile. They could not overcome the inertia or the pressure of the infected now gathering outside, and even if closed, there was no longer a way to lock them. In a brief, quiet exchange amidst the rising panic, Yuriko Takagi, Saya's mother, spoke to her husband, acknowledging the difficult position they were in and showing her profound respect for his leadership and defense planning, even as the situation spiraled out of control. As the hordes hammered at the rapidly weakening gate, Kohta Hirano, the group's dedicated firearms expert, moved into position. He utilized his arsenal of non-electronic weaponry to provide overwhelming cover fire, showcasing his profound tactical value and demonstrating why he held the guns. It was during this critical, desperate moment that Yuriko approached her daughter, Saya. Yuriko handed Saya a pistol, instructing her that Kohta was the one who would teach her how to use it. A symbolic passing of the torch and an acceptance of Kohta's competency within the new, violent reality. Despite the ferocious defensive fire, the sheer mass of the dead proved unstoppable. The iron gates buckled, tore free, and crashed down. A torrent of infected immediately poured into the courtyard, signaling the irreversible breach of the compound. Many were caught in the overwhelming surge. In a tragic demonstration of non-combatant helplessness, the woman who had previously dared to speak against Soichiro Takagi was attacked. She snapped under the pressure of the attack, frantically hacking at the dead before she was completely overwhelmed. The core group maintained a desperate defense line. Rei Miyamoto worked seamlessly, backing up Saeko Busujima, whose katana skills were deployed with deadly efficiency. Young Alice Marisato demonstrated her own crucial role by quickly passing fresh magazines to Kohta Hirano, ensuring his continuous, suppressing field of fire. Despite their combined skill, the numbers were simply too great. The group realized they could not hold the courtyard and were forced to retreat further into the mansion structure. The group paused their retreat, defending an inner doorway. Saya, recovering her composure despite the overwhelming loss, knew they could not remain in the house. They would simply be waiting for the dead to find them. Soichiro Takagi, head held high, made the final, resolute tactical decision. They must execute a desperate final stand to break through the surging mass of the dead and reach safety. Soichiro addressed the students for the final time. He announced his intention for him and Yuriko to make a diversionary charge, sacrificing themselves to ensure the students' escape. The surviving students immediately began their sprint toward the secure garage, where the specialized vehicles were kept. They reached the garage and found their lifeline, a heavy-duty Humvee. This vehicle, provided by Shizuka's friend Rika, had been engineered with anti-EMP measures, meaning it was one of the few pieces of complex machinery still functional after the high-altitude nuclear blast. Although resistant, it still required final mechanical attention to operate at full capacity. Inside the garage, the technician known only as Mad was frantically performing the final repairs needed to fully stabilize the Humvee. The students formed a perimeter, knowing that this was their last viable defense line. Kohta Hirano, intensely focused, reflected on the desperate situation, comparing their final stand to the legendary defense of the Alamo. One of the infected managed to slip past the outer defenses and into the garage, but the group swiftly eliminated the threat. Mad finally succeeded in his work, and the heavy Humvee engine roared to life. In a final act of selfless dedication, Mad chose to remain behind. He informed the group to keep Saya safe and accepted his fate in securing their path. As the students prepared for their departure, Soichiro and Yuriko Takagi were fighting back-to-back, completely surrounded by the dense, overwhelming tide of the infected. Their fighting was crucial. It successfully diverted the main bulk of the horde, allowing the Humvee to have a clear initial path out of the garage. The Humvee burst out of the garage and into the courtyard, easily plowing through the dead in its path. It passed the spot where Saya's parents were engaged in their definitive last stand. Saeko Busujima, ever the vigilant defender, rode on top of the vehicle, providing a high vantage point to shoot at any immediate threats. The most dangerous maneuver came next. Shizuka was forced to execute an extremely difficult, high-risk move, tilting the heavy vehicle up onto two wheels. As the vehicle violently tilted, Saeko helped tilt the Humvee to ensure that it would clear the blockage. In a split second, Takashi Komuro reached out and grabbed her, pulling her back into the vehicle just before she hit the concrete barricade, ensuring the entire group successfully cleared the barrier and sped down the main street. This moment confirmed the successful transition of the group's leadership and self-reliance, having physically broken free from the mansion's authority and into the wider anarchic world. As the Humvee gained distance, the survivors watched the sun begin to rise on the horizon. Saya Takagi, witnessing the sacrifice of her family and the success of the group's violent independence, was deeply moved. She looked back toward the compound, now out of sight, and admitted quietly to Kohta Hirano that he had been correct in advising her to keep it together. The episode showed one last heartbreaking visual of Soichiro and Yuriko Takagi far behind them, completely engulfed by the tide of the infected, but still fighting resolutely back to back, making their final stand as the sun crested the morning horizon. The brief security provided by the specialized vehicle was short-lived. Despite the Humvee's EMP-hardened systems, the heavy vehicle made it only as far as the highway before it suffered a mechanical failure and abruptly broke down. This breakdown was the final narrative confirmation that the group was utterly alone. They were separated from the political protection of the Takagi family, divorced from the technological convenience of the modern world, and now stood without reliable transportation in an unfamiliar, exposed environment. Their survival depended entirely on their weapons and their teamwork. Takashi Komuro, Saeko Busujima, and Kohta Hirano stepped out of the now useless Humvee onto the abandoned freeway. While they were initially frightened by the breakdown, their expression quickly changed, becoming confident and ready to face the new challenges before them. Takashi, accepting the relentless nature of their new reality with a blend of determination and cynical fatigue, sigh, "What a hassle." And that marks the end of Highschool of the Dead. Episode 12. After all the blood, chaos, and loss, our survivors stand together once more, scarred but unbroken. The world they once knew has crumbled into silence, yet hope still flickers in their hearts. From the school rooftop to the flooded city, they've faced every nightmare imaginable, and through it all, one truth remains: as long as they have each other, they'll keep fighting to live. If you've made it this far, thank you for surviving this journey with us. This has been Best Ever Anime, where we relive the greatest anime stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss what's next. Because even when the world ends, our love for anime never dies. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and stay alive.